Hopefully last day.
Yeah. The Cincinnati Bengals are present in Paul Brown Stadium for OTAs, or most of them are. We'll bring you the notes from the press conferences on Tuesday.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Thanks for making us your first listen on your commute, maybe, or whatever you're doing as you listen to us in the morning. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, that follow button. Will be delivered to your eyes and ears first thing when we upload every day. Today, we're brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And our listeners, Locked On Bengals listeners, get a $50 off $500 purchase bonus with promo code Locked On at checkout. James, we're going to talk about Jessie Bates' absence from OTAs. This should not surprise anyone necessarily, but it is something that was confirmed since we've last recorded. Mike Hilton made it known that the Bengals are aware that a lot of people out there think the Bengals Super Bowl run was a fluke. And then Darrin Simmons weighed in on the specialist battle that will be coming in camp. But first, Mike Hilton talked to the media, James, and well, he made it clear that he and everyone in the Bengals locker room likes Jessie Bates and wants to see Jessie Bates extended and wants Jessie Bates around for the future. Sees Jessie Bates as part of the core, which Mike Hilton, of course, considers himself to be part of, and he should. He's on a 4-year deal with 3 years left, but Jessie Bates on the franchise tag, like many players on the franchise tag, not present for OTAs. The Bengals don't have a mandatory minicamp this year. So Bates not partaking in this part of the offseason program. And it shouldn't be surprising. He's not the only one either, as Zach Taylor pointed out. It sounds like there are a few players that aren't present. Rookies, by the way, will report later. They're also not there yet. Rookie minicamp has not happened yet. But I guess it is noteworthy, although expected, that Jessie Bates is not in attendance.
Yeah, it is. And it's just on it. It's voluntary off-season workouts. It's not even OTAs. And they don't have any mandatory anything this off-season up until training camp. So the odds of us seeing Jessie Bates probably not going to happen. Rookie minicamp, for those wondering, is toward the middle of this month. It's a couple weeks away. So we'll get to know these rookies and get to chat with them more and all of that stuff in person and have that for you here on Locked On Bengals. But as far as Jessie Bates goes, look, who is surprised at this? He got tagged. They drafted a safety in the first round. They drafted a safety in the 5th round. I don't know why people are calling Taylor Britt a safety. He's a corner, and I get it. He played some safety. Dude, I went on multiple radio shows on Monday, and it was like 3 safeties. What are they? Comments. Hybrid, but no. He's a corner. All right? That's it. Anyways.
Sounds like we have a few things to clarify here. Cam Taylor-Britt's going to play outside corner. He might align at safety a handful of times this year, like he did at Nebraska last year, where he had like 5 free safety snaps, and I think they were all in one game. Tyson Anderson is a safety. He's not a linebacker. And Dax Hill is going to play pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, because he's great, and he should have been the 31st pick. And that's why I give it an A++.
Your Jessie Bates point.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as Bates goes, not shocking. Understand it. At the same time, it's like, all right, so where do they go from here, right? Because Mike Hilton said, yeah, of course, I want Bates to get paid. He's said it all along. He's been a real big Jessie Bates supporter since he got to town last offseason. And at the same time, he knows it's a business. He knows that Dax Hill is there. He knows that Von Bell's in a contract year. And so it's going to be interesting. The Bengals have a decision to make, and Jessie Bates has a decision to make. Let's be honest here. The safety market isn't what it once was. Tyrann Mathieu got, a 3-year up to $33 million deal with the New Orleans Saints. Some are going to say, all right, well, he's older. He's on the back end, all of that stuff. All right, well, that's fine. What about Marcus Williams with the Baltimore Ravens, the top safety in this free agent class, around $14 million per year. And so to me, it might be wise of Bates to get a deal done now, especially if he looks at this team and says, man, look at this core. Look at these guys, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, all these guys that he would want to partner with long-term. I think the Bengals want to keep him long-term. They're just not going to pay him Jamal Adams money. And that's the part of it. Does Bates want that? Because if so, he's not getting it in Cincinnati. And the Bengals have his replacement now if they need it. Dax Hill fits well with Bates. He's also going to fit well without Bates. And that's the beauty of picking him. And so that's the give and take that I think is going on now. And I don't think anything gets done in the near future. The good news, there is a deadline, and deadlines usually spur negotiations. They usually force action. That deadline to extend franchise tagged players is July 15th. So we're going to know before training camp if the Bengals can get an extension done or not. And if Bates is willing to negotiate some, because it feels like him, along with his agent, David Mulligetta, they've been pretty stubborn in their asking price as of now. And the Bengals have been stubborn on their end too. We'll see if either side gives, because right now, I don't think we're going to see Bates until training camp. And who knows? I don't think he's going to hold out from there, but I don't think we'll see him until then.
And we really don't know what exactly Bates is offering and what exactly the Bengals have offered and how far apart they are. It doesn't seem like they're particularly close. It's never been reported that they were close. It could come down to guarantees with Mulligetta, especially, as we've discussed. But what odds do you give it, James? Deadline coming up, can spur action. Mm-hmm. I would be surprised if an extension is reached before the season. Pleasantly surprised. Yep. He's 25 years old. He's one of the younger safeties out there. But you're right. You look at the safety contracts, and Jamal Adams at $17.5 million per year sticks out like a sore thumb, sticks out like a Christian Kirk on the wide receiver list. Is like, man, this is skewing the whole market, because many safeties that could be comparable are in the $14 million a year range, like Kevin Byard or Budda Baker, or all the way up to Justin Simmons, just north of $15 million. And then you have the 17.5 sitting at top, way over what a lot of top tier safeties are getting paid.
Yep. And so Mulligetta, I would imagine he represents Justin Simmons as well. I bet he's trying to get Bates more than what he got Simmons, and maybe even more than Adams. And I don't know that, right? It's not like there's reports that he wants to be the league's highest paid safety, but the Jamal Adams contract is trash. And the only reason he got that money is because the Seahawks went all in, 2 first rounders. They had to pay him, and that was it. We have to keep him. We can't not extend him. We just gave up 2 first rounders for him a year prior. So that's why they did that. The Bengals look at that and they're like, all right, I don't give a damn what Jamal Adams is making. The Seahawks, just because they made a stupid decision, it doesn't mean we're going to. And that's the part, is can they find a middle ground? You asked for a percentage. I think it's about 25%, and that they get a deal done. And that's not great. That's not ideal. And I think it's just because there's been so much time. I mean, think about how the season went. All the stuff that Bates went through mentally, being on that 1-year deal, essentially, or in the final year of his contract. And at any point, at any moment, he could have signed an extension. His party could have reached out. His people could have reached out to the Bengals and said, look, it's affecting his play. Let's just get this deal done. We'll take the deal that you offered in training camp. And I bet you the Bengals, I know they don't normally do that. I bet you they would have been like, let's go. And yet here we are. Did that asking price come down at all after his worst regular season, the worst regular season of his career? Probably not, after what he did in the postseason. So it's tough. And that's why I give it a 25% chance. Not overly optimistic, because now which side is desperate? Jessie Bates knows what it's like to play in essentially a franchise tag year. He didn't make $13 million last year. He's going to make that this year, 1-year deal. And you look at the Bengals, the replacement's right there. And a guy, I don't know about you, but as a prospect, is there's a reason he went 31st overall and not in the 50s in round 2. He's probably a better prospect coming out than Jessie Bates was 4 years ago.
Will be interesting, to say the least. I think your 25% estimate is a very fair ballpark. Coming up next, Mike Hilton made it clear, talking a lot of Mike Hilton today, that the Bengals know that many In the media, many fans are characterizing the Bengals Super Bowl run as a fluke. We'll talk about that coming up next.
You want everyday fine jewelry, but where do you go to find it? Well, we're here to help you here at Locked On Bengals because it's BlueNile.com. You can use BlueNile.com to celebrate all of life's awesome events, including Mother's Day, which is this weekend. There are two parts to this business. You got the wedding jewelry, you got the fine jewelry, and guess what? BlueNile.com is a one-stop shop for all of them, whether it's engagement rings and bands, diamond jewelry, cocktail rings, gemstone necklaces. You got to get to BlueNile.com. This Mother's Day, give mom something she's going to treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Bengals listeners, you're going to save money right now with promo code Locked On. You're going to get $50 off any order of $500 or more. It's a podcast exclusive right here on Locked On Bengals. All you got to do, BlueNile.com. Promo code Locked On and save $50 on any order of $500 or more. And the best part about every order, they're insured, they ship free, they arrive in a discreet package that isn't going to give away what it is. So don't delay. BlueNile.com, promo code Locked On.
James, the common refrain we've heard from Zach Taylor is that the Bengals are starting back over at square one. You heard Logan Wilson echo that today. And you heard Mike Hilton echo that today. We're ready to get out there and prove it again, said Mike Hilton after saying, we know people are saying it's the Bengals. That's why it's a fluke. It's the Bengals. What does that even mean, man? Like, how is this something that you got Joe Burrow at quarterback, playing some of the best quarterback in the NFL. You have one of the best receivers in the NFL with Jamar Chase, who as a 21-year-old set the league on fire. They're hitting on free agency pickups, I should say. They are running back a Super Bowl team for the most part with a bunch of additions in the secondary through the draft and 3 new starting offensive linemen, all of whom should be significant upgrades. Meanwhile, they've sustained a lot of their depth from last year. Their biggest free agency departure is CJ Uzomah, who was replaced with Hayden Hurst. And they were healthy. Mike Hilton acknowledged that. He said, we had some luck. We were healthy. That doesn't always happen in the league. We were blessed to be healthy. But calling it a fluke? I don't know, man. Like you can call certain things in the regular season, I think, fluky, and the playoffs are inherently unstable, one and done, single elimination tournaments. You're going to have some luck for whoever comes out of that on top. But calling it a fluke? I mean, I called the Steelers the worst 10-0 team in history last year when they started out 10-0, and then they didn't win another game. Or maybe they got to 11. I can't remember.
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years now because, right.
Yep.
That's still last year to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. When you go to the Super Bowl and you're seconds away or fractions of a second away from winning it, depending on how you define it, you're calling it a fluke?
Let me tell you why.
Crazy.
Let me tell you why people view it that way.
They think they think Joe Burrow's Joe Flacco? They think he's the wrong Joe?
And then I'll tell you why they're not a fluke, because I don't think they are. So hold your damn comments until I finish, because I'm just explaining to you why people from 1,000-foot view, because I can already feel it. James is Nick. No. I don't think it's a fluke. Here's why people do. Because people like or teams like the Atlanta Falcons 28-3 exist, where they get there, but they were an old team led by a quarterback that had a career year. It was really, that was it. That was their window. And then they lose their offensive coordinator and things kind of stumble, almost like the 2015 Bengals, where that was it. If they were going to do it, that was the year to do it. You're right. Joe Flacco, that's another one, but that was an old team. And a lot of those guys retired shortly after that or left the team, or in Flacco's case, just didn't play nearly as well as they did during the playoff run. The other one I would mention, and they didn't make the Super Bowl, but the Jacksonville Jaguars that lost in the 2017-2018 season, I believe, in the AFC title game to the Patriots. And well, you have Blake Bortles. And so that's the point, right? So I get why everyone outside of Cincinnati or outside of Bengals fans looks at it and are like, well, what have the Bengals done? They made the Super Bowl after going 6-25-1 for 2 years. So the equity isn't built up yet. So to win them over, the Bengals, they're going to have to go win games this year and show that they are sustainable. It is sustainable that they are legit like the Bills. They are legit like the Chiefs. That doesn't mean they got to go to the Super Bowl again. But, if they go 7-10, that's not good enough. If they go 11-6 or 12-5, now I think people will start to buy in because a Super Bowl appearance, 11-6, 12-5, even if they don't make the Super Bowl, even if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, in the wild card round or the divisional round. So that part of it, I think, is why people feel that way. But you already hit on it, why it isn't a fluke. It starts with Joe Burrow. None of those other teams that I mentioned have Joe Burrow. And you're right, Joe Flacco on his best day isn't Joe Burrow. And now Joe Burrow has this offensive line that's the best offensive line he's had maybe of his life, maybe of his adult life. Because at LSU, the offensive line wasn't a bunch of world beaters. They were as a team. They were world beaters. Those dudes were, that might be the best college football team ever, going 15-0 in 2019. But he's overcome a lot and had to overcome a lot last year. And so to me, this offense should take another step, maybe multiple steps. We've talked about the additions on defense. And the other thing that should happen with this team, and that Zach Taylor deserves a ton of credit for, he's gotten better each and every year, I think. And last year, there were still some issues. I think he's going to learn from those again. And much like a young quarterback, learn from those and improve. Obviously, you expect Joe Burrow to improve. Plus, he has a better line and talent around him. So to me, yeah, not a fluke. But I can also see why people are saying that. And the analogy I would give is, Peyton Manning and the Colts, it took them a few years, and they didn't have the playoff success that Burrow had early on. But when he was drafted in 98, it took them a few years for people to take him really, really seriously. And that's not necessarily the same from a Burrow standpoint, because they already went deep in the playoffs. But I think you just got to show you can be consistent with it. And so if the Bengals win 11-12 this year and they're a real contender throughout the season, then I think a lot of this will go away, the talk of flukiness and things like that. But it was just 1 year. As magical as it was, as fun of a run as it was 1 year. And the good news is I think that this team has the mental makeup to, all right, it's time to go. It's time to turn the page and rebound. Because a lot of teams haven't rebounded after they lose in the Super Bowl. I think this team is built different, and that starts with Joe Burrow.
That's a big thing to me, I guess, is the Super Bowl loser curse, the hangover that is discussed so often. Is this team young and dumb enough, and I mean that in a good way, to not let that bother them, to continue to strive for greatness, to really buy into the culture? And that's the other thing. You talked about Zach Taylor getting better each year. The culture has gotten better each year. Lou Anarumo evolving each year, with that defense drawing a lot of praise, especially throughout the playoffs, for the way that they individualized game plans and made life hard for opposing offenses on some teams that were expected to do things to them that they did not do. In the divisional playoff game against the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry was supposed to run for 200 yards, and the Bengals were supposed to have no chance to stop the return of the king. And then Derrick Henry hardly did anything. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, they weren't going to only score 3 points in the second half again. Well, turns out they scored 3 points in the second half again. And then the Super Bowl, it wasn't the offense, I would say, for Sean McVay's Rams that got them over the hump. But, I'm just saying credit the defense's evolution under Lou Anarumo as well. A lot of things getting better, but you're right. It all comes back to Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
And that Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco thing, like Flacco played in that playoff run on a heater that he had never before and never again achieved.
Yep.
Joe Burrow has shown us greatness, sustained greatness, and there's no reason to think that he won't continue on that trajectory, in my opinion.
Remember before the Titans game, it was Larry Ogunjobi is out. How are they going to stop Derrick Henry?
Yep.
And I did I went on with Jeremy Rao and Joe Daneman on Fox 19, and literally like this back alley, they tracked me down the night before the game to interview me. And I was out to dinner. I was like, all right, let's do it. And they asked me about that. And I'm like, everyone's talking about how Larry Ogunjobi is the key to he's not good against the ground game. If anything, this is the game you don't want him. And obviously the Bengals did what they needed to do there. So yeah, it is. Don't let it get to you, Bengals fans. That being said, they do have something to prove.
I agree with that.
Because Yeah, because there is a Deshaun Watson that at some point is going to play for the Browns. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens were all dinged up. And even though I think I have like a 50-50 shot to make the Ravens 53-man roster at wide receiver because they don't have anybody to catch passes outside of Rashad Bateman and the kid from Texas who's returning punts. I forget his name, but I actually liked him coming out. You remember his name?
No, continue.
No, it's okay. Anyways, he's a second, third year player. Anyways, so yeah, I think 50-50 shot, but they still have to prove it. And so that's the part of it. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, say what you want about them. They were only
They still have a
game back last year.
defense.
And they have an offense. They might not have a quarterback.
Well,
no, dude, their offense is legit. Come on.
You need a quarterback to play offense in the NFL.
Sure. Okay. And their quarterback, I guarantee you this, is going to be better than what they had last year.
I'm not too worried about that yet.
I'm not worried. I'm just saying, right? So prove it. And if you prove it again, a lot of this crap is going to go by the wayside. At the same time, if you're at the top, they always talk about your fall. Ask Tom Brady. He's been dealing with it for 20 years. Ask Patrick Mahomes. They're talking about the AFC West now. Oh, the Chargers. Oh, all these teams. That's part of it. By the way, if I'm going to make the Ravens 53-man roster, Jake, I'm going to have to continue on the Built Bar plan, the number one protein bar on the planet. Really think I got a shot. I'm not kidding. You looked at that wide receiver depth chart. If it's going to happen, Built Bar is going to get me there. And don't worry, I'm not going to try out for the Ravens. I'm still hoping that Darrin Simmons, who we're going to talk about next, well, is looking for a backup punt returner, which I would totally suck at. But Built Bar would help me get better at that. It's going to help you get the protein punch, midday protein punch, post-workout protein punch you're looking for. The bars are covered in 100% chocolate, high in protein, low in sugar, low in calories, perfect for you. So get them right now at built.com. Use promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, for 15% off the number one protein bar on the planet, go to built.com and use promo code LOCKed15.
As we could talk about this disrespect that Bengals fans are feeling for their team for a full episode, but we won't, because that's not the way we do things here on Locked On Bengals. When people flap their gums, as some people say, about things that are not necessarily the most logical, we don't give them too much of our time. We give them a little bit of time. We can do some myth busting, but only to a certain point, James, because we know the reality, and our listeners, I think, know the reality of the Cincinnati Bengals, because that's what we bring them every day. Part of that reality this year will feature some special teams battles. Darrin Simmons talking to the media extensively at length on Tuesday. What were your biggest takeaways, James? You were in the building.
Legitimate punter competition. I know a lot of people were talking about, oh man, I can't believe they brought back Kevin Huber. It turns out the offer to Kevin Huber has been on the table, and Huber wanted to wait to see what they did in the draft, which I get. I understand it on one hand. On the other, I think Drew Chrisman has a shot here. He does. And it's not just punting, it's the holding. And so that's the edge. That's the edge that Huber has. And Darrin Simmons talked about it. He said, well, now you go for it a lot more. You have this elite offense. You're going to go for it even more than normal. He was like, in the past, it's probably the punter, it's 60% punts, 40% holding. He said, now it's closer to 50-50. And it's probably not 50-50. He said 55-45. But still, that's part of it. So, one, Kevin Huber does have the equity built up. Certainly the trust from a holding standpoint. It's not like they didn't just set records with Evan McPherson and Kevin Huber in that department. On the other hand, Drew Chrisman, he's the young shiny toy, man. And everyone's talking about punt god. Well, I think Chrisman is a hell of a punter. And so can he be a good enough holder to where Evan McPherson is going to be able to trust him, where Clark Harris is going to trust him if he's the long snapper? Or is it Cal Adamitis out of Pittsburgh, who, again, is much like Chrisman, is going to get a real shot here? And so training camp, it's going to be filled with punter watch and long snapper watch. So boy, oh boy, buckle up. It sounds kind of weird to me. I've never covered a long snapper watch, long snapper gate. I've covered a few field goal kicker competitions, but not a punt competition either, punter competition. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be unique, uncharted territory for the Bengals special teams unit, at least for those that have followed the team over the past 15 years or so.
You better find some special teams specialists, experts to learn how to evaluate long snappers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, like, if a snap is bad, that's very obvious, but you assume that neither will make a bad snap. And if that's the case, how do you differentiate the long snappers? You know,
Honestly, it's going to be a lot of talking to Darrin Simmons and Zach
Yeah.
and hoping for honesty, because a part of it, especially for Kyle Adamitis, is going to be identifying how the offensive line is going to get attacked, right? And all right, this is what's going to happen. This is the guy that's going to be coming at me, because Clark Harris isn't going to get confused. He's seen it all, right? And so that's the part I think that is crucial. And obviously, and we're not going to be measuring this, but the Bengals will. The snap speed is such a big part of it. You know, obviously it needs to. Oh, absolutely, it is a thing. Yeah. So that's the thing that they'll judge it on. Obviously, you want them accurate, all of those things, but they'll track the speed of the snaps. Because think about it, the slower the speed of the snap, the longer it takes to get there, the less time you have to punt it, kick it, and all of those things. And so the snap speed really matters.
Probably RPMs too. You know, the how tight is that spiral? I literally, like, if there's one thing about football that I don't know, it's it's long snapper evaluation. Like, wouldn't part of it be like coverage, punt coverage, because the long snapper is a part of the punt coverage team? You see Clark Harris down there downing a ball sometime and making tackles from time to time. I imagine that's part of it as well. The punting competition, perhaps a little bit easier. You're going to have your stopwatch. You're going to be measuring hang time. You're going to be counting touchbacks. You're going to be counting coughing corners. You're going to be counting long punts when they do some long punting. But I do like Darrin Simmons' point, on a serious note, about going for it more the way the NFL is going with some of the analytics stuff that they're doing, with the kind of offense that they have. And he talked about this. He's been consistent. The importance of getting the snap down and held properly for your kicker, for Drew Chrisman, will be a huge part of it, especially with Evan McPherson, which you talked about too. They're kicking field goals from further out, and you need that machine to stay well oiled, because it is going to be important to winning and losing games. We saw how important it was just last year.
Yeah. And so that's the part of it. Simmons also said, because I know there were a lot of people when Huber came back, like, man, he just isn't the same. He said, look, we weren't good enough flipping field position, especially at the end of the year. And so you're talking about a guy who's a 14-year NFL veteran, and now he's going to be in a punter competition, right? So he's going to have to punt more than he normally would during camp. Is he going to have the juice throughout the year? And I said juice for a reason. So it's this is a real moment for Kevin Huber to, his back is against the wall a little bit, because I don't know. I mean, is another team going to reach out? Does he have other offers if he doesn't get this one? So I think that part of the reason he waited to sign is the last thing he wanted is to get released because they drafted someone. And so now he has a real competition on his hands, but it's against the guy that he's seen, he's aware of, and he knows that he's got to be better. And so physically, hopefully he gets on the Built Bar plan, because maybe he'll have some booming kicks. And Drew, the holding part for you is big. And I think Built Bar will help in that department as well.
We'll see how the punting and holding and snapping goes eventually. We're a few months away from that camp battle.
We'll see it soon. I mean, I think we'll see it in OTAs for sure.
But it'll carry on.
Sure.
I mean, when fans are going to see it, the fans will see it in person, assuming training camp opens back up this year for training camp, right?
Yeah, I think it will. I think there'll be some fans. What could you do better? Punt a ball or field a punt return, which is much harder to do than people realize.
I have done both in my life. I think I would do, if I could probably fair catch a ball better than I could punt a ball. I can't punt very well. If the question was between that and long snapping, though, I can long snap. I learned a little bit of that. I could do that okay. I could probably get a snap back there for like a PAT.
Well, you'd get yeah. I see what you're saying. In flag, if they couldn't run you over.
Well, the long snappers are very protected on field goals.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll tell Darrin.
No, I'm not.
that
I'm
it's
not competing.
It's a 3-way competition at long snapper.
Every time this comes up, I'm very happy to admit that I do not belong on a
But-
football field. Keep me on the sidelines, coach.
Yeah. Of the 3, I can't kick at all. I certainly want one a long snap.
Oh yeah, you'd be
I
a
would-
returner.
I would try. Yeah. And I have everything to do. But man, it's not easy. Like people think that it's like, oh, you just field it. No, man. That it's not it. That is one of the hardest jobs in sports. It really is. And one quick note before we go, because obviously Simmons, there were some returners that they liked in this draft, and obviously he talked about that at the combine. At the same time, 2 things. One, they looked at all the top returners that they had, the higher graded returners the past couple of years in the draft, and those guys didn't set the league on fire right away from the jump, which is interesting. That was part of their decision making. And he also said that there weren't a ton of them that they liked in the draft.
There
And
were.
when you only have 6 picks, obviously that's a factor.
I think we looked at this one day.
Yeah,
Maybe I looked
not
at it
many.
with Joe. I can't remember.
No,
But
we
there
did.
was
We
like
talked about it.
there were like 5 significant returners that had major college success in this draft, and Velus Jones ended up getting picked in like the 3rd round at
Dude.
25 years old out of Tennessee. So
Yep.
very interesting stuff. We'll see
Wasn't
how
it
the
the
undrafted.
Bears? Wasn't it the Bears that did that?
It was the Bears because I was
Oh.
complaining about Justin Fields and him not having
God.
anybody to throw to. Poor Justin
Man,
Fields.
I might be able to make the Bears wide receiver core too. I'm gonna have to eat a
Probably a
Built Bar
better
with it.
shot, to be honest, with the
I mean, the
Bears.
Ravens wide receivers aren't good either.
At least they have Rashad, like they have a guy in Rashad Bateman who's good. He's a solid
Yeah.
player.
No, I think Bateman could end up being really good. It's just after that. Devin Duvernay, by the way, is the kid out of Texas that I like. The
that's right.
speedster. It's pretty good.
Anyway, let's wrap up there before we get too far down what James thinks he can do for professional football teams or not. And we'll be back tomorrow with Mike Potts. We'll get a scouting report on James Rapien from Mike when we talk to him tomorrow. We'll ask him what position he thinks James could play for the Cincinnati Bengals, assuming he was in tip-top shape at age 21. And we'll also ask him about the NFL draft that the Bengals just completed. Until next time, Bengals fans, hoo-day, and have a good one.